Jay, how are you?
I'm doing well, Paul. How you doing?
Not too bad. A little nicer day today than yesterday.
That wind was biting yesterday.
Yes.
Seeing a little light at the end of the tunnel here. I think spring may be in the air.
Did you avail yourself of those shots at the community building last week?
No, I've had both of mine at the Samoset. In fact, we're 2 weeks out from the second. So
there you go. Hey, you're in the clear, so to speak. So
we've made a decision. We're going to go down to North Carolina on the 26th. We're going to leave just for a month. It's been a year, so we just want to get down there for a while and get out of here.
I don't blame you.
Looking pretty good so far. I think we're going to do it.
There we go. Yeah, I got mine last Wednesday, so I got about a week and a half to go. So
you're doing up in Waldo County?
Actually, it was the community building over in Lincolnville. The what are they called? The EMS, the ambulance service guys, got a hold of a bunch of Johnson & Johnson, and so they put up.
So all you need is one.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
So, the shoulder was a little sore.
My daughter's a principal down in Massachusetts, and they finally got theirs, the teachers and the administrators, and they got the Johnson & Johnson. So I got one and done.
Yeah.
Hi, folks.
How are you, Rich?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Lisa.
Am I working? Yeah. Okay.
So who are we expecting, Justin or not?
I'd love to have Justin. I really want to get some input from him, but we'll see.
Oh, he's a
He
maybe?
said he was coming, didn't he?
He gave me some times, but he didn't say he was going to be here, but we'll see.
Okay, good. People are talking about getting their shots.
Yeah,
You got your Jay?
I
One?
got both. Yeah, we're 2 weeks out from the second one.
Oh, good for you. I got a
And
second.
I got my J&J over at the community building in Lincolnville last Wednesday. So
Oh, lucky.
J&J's
Yeah.
here. Good. And so's Justin.
hi, Justin.
Hi, Justin. I think he's muted.
Hello, Justin.
Not there.
Not yet. Justin, can you hear us?
No.
Not yet.
He said he could hear us. He got a hand up. Can you talk, Justin?
Not yet.
Yeah.
How about now, Justin?
Doesn't want to talk. Justin,
Okay.
quick.
Oh,
Can you hear us?
he's got his hand up.
Well, he doesn't have, what's that hand? What does it mean?
Yeah, you muted.
Now he's muted.
Muted.
There he is.
Pick it.
Can you?
Hey, guys.
How are you?
Hi.
Good,
There it
thanks.
Been good. I don't know about Andrea. I heard something from her the first time I went around. She said she could come. You want to get started and see if she comes in, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
I would.
Okay. All right. Glad you're here, Justin, because you're a big part of this thing, I think, now. I wanted to get your input in it, so glad you could make it. Paul, Maybe you can let us know if anything's happening in Camden.
Nothing new to report about Camden.
Okay.
I'm going to try to get a meeting with Audra, the town manager down there, and Dale, and outline plans for this upcoming season, especially because someone cut most of the moorings over by 52 last fall. And, the question now is, should Dale direct them to Bog Bridge or direct them to someplace else rather than that place, which seems to be the epicenter of all the problems. So we will see.
Cut them maliciously.
Maliciously, correct.
So Paul, what I understand from listening to you recently is that you're not going to have an ordinance as such on the lake there for moorings, but hopefully through what your work is going to be with the Inland Harbor Master, Justin, you're going to have some regulation of those moorings, correct?
Correct. Dale's took the course and is certified. And while he doesn't have police powers, he has, similar to the harbor master in Camden Harbor, and I assume the harbor master down in Lincolnville Harbor on the marine side. They don't have police powers, but they have inland harbor master powers, and they can tell people where to put their moorings and make them move the moorings if they have to, and that sort of thing. So that is pretty much what Camden is trying out, that model right now without an ordinance, and we'll see how it works. Last year that came about halfway through the boating season, so we're looking to get a full boating season in, see how that's going to work, and if not, I suspect that we may well be putting in a citizens petition ordinance and try to get it through that way. So.
Justin, you are our inland harbor master, but you also have law enforcement authority, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so the authority given under Title 38, the authority given underneath whatever ordinance the town puts in place, plus you have law enforcement, so you can stop a boat that's speeding and you can enforce that speeding rule inside the waterway or something like that, whereas a harbor master really can't do that, correct?
That is correct. Now, keeping in mind, my commission as law enforcement is in Knox County, but as I understand it through the Inland Harbor Master for the town of Lincolnville, there are 2 stages of a harbor master, something to the effect of stage A and B, one of which gives arrest power, the other does not. It is my understanding that I fall under the classifications of the Lincolnville Harbor Master, Inland Harbor Master, that I fall under the statute of which I do have arrest powers for the town of Lincolnville.
Okay.
That is something that would need to be clarified. We've gone and operated under the assumption that I do.
Okay. Just so that we're clear, I hope, Justin and Paul, did you get the forwarded message that I had sent to Lisa and Rich about my discussion with the Inland Harbor Master in Harrison?
Yes.
Yep, I did, and I briefly reviewed it.
Okay, great. So we've all got that. Our charge, which by the way was back in 2018, I think in the fall or something like that, from the selectmen was to examine the options to address the problems. A was to identify what options exist to address the problem. I think we've done that. Explore the pros and cons of each option that we offered to the selectmen. I think we've done that. We outlined the options that we did when we talked to them. Review each location for appropriateness. I think we've done a lot of talk about the places where we can have mooring fields, what's available at Breezemere Park, what's available around the lakes and ponds that we have in Lincolnville, and then make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen as to what option the committee believes is the best interest of the town, which we did when we offered them 3 options, and they selected the option which was be the lowest regulatory ordinance that we could develop and present to them. And the last one was to draft an ordinance, which we've also done and presented to the town. So we are at a point where we've done what we were asked to do. I guess it comes down to the point of where do you think we need to go to finish off this charge, given the fact that we've created a draft and given it to the town. At the same time, the town has received a draft from the town attorney, and they, in my opinion, are different. So do you feel it's up to us to make a recommendation of which of those two the town should consider? Or should we just talk to the town and say, what do you want to do? Or where do you think we should go from here?
Have we seen the draft presented by the town's attorney?
Yes. You don't have a copy of it?
I'm not saying that I don't, but it doesn't ring a bell.
Okay.
Well, they virtually said that the moorings almost can be anywhere and put up by anybody.
Okay, Rich.
Yeah, I would suggest that we do put an ordinance forward, another one for the attorney to look at that differs from our first in terms of, you know, our trying to emphasize a common mooring field and protecting the first 200 feet for shore owners. Obviously, that's not going to work. So if we drop that and we have the designated mooring fields, the 100 to 200 feet for the public, but we add regulations, regulations being that they need to be permitted and that they're reviewed by the Inland Harbor Master, and that a fee is charged for that permit to help pay for any additional time to the Harbor Master. Because we did hear that the funds for that were pretty minimal. And the others that people have to have some parking plan, either for, you know, with a property owner or at like at Pitcher Pond, you know, there is a little parking area near the public access area, public ramp. So my suggestion would be we put forth a proposal to the attorney again without the common mooring fields, but with some regulation of the designated mooring area.
Please.
As I recall, the attorney said that they did not like our the draft that we put forward because the town of Harrison had abandoned that document and had gotten a new one, and which I thought was odd because there's not a great deal of difference between the old and the new for Harrison. And I think the Harrison one is really simple and should be used as a model and not reinvent a new ordinance.
In looking back on it, and if you've looked at the email that I sent and forwarded to Paul and to Justin, Harrison's ordinance is very similar to the ordinance that Sally outlined and we outlined also. The only difference between the two is that Sally's highly administrative and we were not.
Mm-hmm. And nor is Harrison, really.
Yeah, that's the discussion I had with David. I said, David, how much are we putting on the town by adopting Sally's ordinance in terms of administration? And the big difference between Harrison and Lincolnville was that it was the harbor master who really controlled that ordinance. The only involvement with the town office with the Harrison ordinance was when somebody was putting a mooring, requesting a mooring in the DMZ or the designated mooring zone, and a fee was required, because they don't require a fee in the shoreland mooring zone, only a fee in the designated mooring zone. That application and the fee was forwarded to the town office. The town office handled the fee, made a copy of the application, paid on it, stamped on it, and mailed it back to the harbor master. And that's the town office's involvement. The harbor master administered the entire ordinance, the annual, the request for a mooring, the annual renewing of a mooring, the removal of a mooring if they didn't review it at the end of the year. Designated mooring zone, he controlled that. He removed and installed the moorings. He hires a diver to do that. So if you look through my note about the Harrison ordinance, it really was on the harbor master.
But
So
somebody has
to
pay the harbor master.
That was why I was interested in Justin looking over that and getting his reaction to that, because, you know, depending on what responsibilities we want to place on the harbor master, we can put that in the ordinance. Harrison does theirs online, so there's really no application. There's an application online, you fill it out, you submit it, he handles it, files it, you get a permit back, and that's it. They do require the white buoy with the blue stripe with a number on it.
Right.
Harbor master does that. They do have a designated mooring zone rule, but he won't place a mooring in the designated mooring zone between 100 and 200 feet unless that applicant has legal access to that mooring.
That's what I'm suggesting.
In other
Did
words,
you find out how much time he spends on this job?
that's a good question. I think he does about 2 days a week. The expectation is he's to do that 2 days a week. He
Well,
does.
that's more than Justin spends, right, Justin?
He does receive a stipend for the work that he does. He does keep all the documentation on his computer or, whatever means they have for doing that.
Well, we have to keep in mind too, that there should not be a lot of pressure on this, at least at the beginning, in terms of a lot of people looking for permits. I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't think it's gonna be demanding, at least for a while, at least for some years. I don't know, what other people think about that?
Well, it depends what you adopt, because if you adopt the Harrison, I think the renewals have to be every year.
Correct.
But I mean, in terms of requests for permits, how many people, I mean, like Jay, you've made the point so many times, people aren't doing it. And it's like, I think there were only 2 this past year. I don't think that's gonna jump extraordinarily in the next couple of years.
Well, if this thing moves forward through the selectmen, then it's going to become public knowledge that an ordinance is being proposed for referendum in June at the town meeting to be passed, or a special town meeting if they decide to do that.
Right.
Once that information is out there, you're going to get reaction from it because we're going to have a public hearing. Also, once the ordinance goes into effect, all moorings are going to have to be registered. So there'll be an initial push to get all existing moorings registered. And then there'll be a process installed for processing all requests for future moorings. Plus, there's a process for annual renewing of the existing moorings.
Now, why would we require property owners to register and get a permit? Wouldn't that be unnecessary? Just more paperwork?
We put that in our ordinance draft when we put it forward, that the permitting process does not include people with a shoreline to 100 feet.
Okay.
It's a mooring in front of their property and there's no fee and no registration. We proposed that.
Well,
Sally
then
said,
you change this. If we use the Harrison document, you would just
Right,
make that change.
Harrison registers the moorings in the first 100 feet, but doesn't pay for them. There's no due,
No, they're no dues.
payment, right?
But
They do
registering
charge-
takes time.
I registered them. That's just a lot more work, legwork.
Yeah, it's
I
time.
don't think we need to do that for property
You
owners.
don't think so?
I
Okay,
don't, so no.
so we can say that we are in favor of not registering moorings from the shoreland to 100 feet.
Yes.
If it's in front of a shoreland owner's property, they have a right to put a mooring there without registering it or paying for it.
Yes, because I think there'll be a lot of complaints if we now require all property owners to register their docks and floats and boats, and that would be tough.
Okay, I would be in agreement with that. That's not an agreement with Sally's draft, but we can put that to the selectmen.
I think there is a small issue there. I believe one of the towns, perhaps it was Naples, got sued because shore owners had too many floats or somethings, moorings, and were out of compliance with Title 38, and there was a lawsuit. So that forced the town to register the moorings that were owned by the shorefront owners. So there's a wrinkle in there, but maybe we'll let somebody else bring it up.
Yeah,
Well-
maybe we'll wait to see if somebody has a problem that can't be handled by the harbor master.
Yeah, I mean,
Hey.
yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, because
I think that makes the most sense, and I think that's what the committee wants, is to have shorefront owners be allowed to put their moorings out and not have to register them or pay for them or anything like that. Sally felt that if there's registration for one class of people out there, then it should be for everyone. And I have to say that Bill Taylor over in Camden agreed with that as well, that if one set of people have to register, then everybody needs to register. So I don't see a problem with trying to get it through, but it may be something that the lawyers will come back at some point and say everybody's got to sign up. So.
Yeah. I think the sales point on that, Paul, might be the fact that the majority of the people that have moorings now have them shoreline to 100 feet. Most of the people who have moorings now, they're personal moorings in front of their shoreline property, and they have one per 80 feet, which is allowed under Title 38. And I think we mentioned it in our ordinance. That exists. I know of no abuse prior to, I know of no abuse now, and I know I can expect no abuse in the future of that process that now exists. I can't think of a valid reason to present to the people of Lincolnville why we should now start charging for that.
Yep.
No.
Okay. So I think we're in agreement there. And I think the sales pitch there is, let's not break or create a problem that we don't have.
Right.
We move forward with the way we've been doing it. You know, Justin's had no trouble with it. We don't know of any trouble with it. We're proposing we continue with it. And that saves the town the administrative process of having to register and take all that kind of stuff in for shorefront to 100 feet.
Right, it saves money to the town, and that's a pretty good point.
Okay. So if we're all in agreement on that, then the question becomes 100 feet to 200 feet in the designated mooring zone. Sally wants to charge for that also. That may be something we might have to give on a little bit. That's something that Justin would have to enforce if we were to permit moorings in the 100 to 200 feet designated mooring zone. The questions then come into play about, well, where is Justin going to authorize the placement of those moorings in that 100 to 200 feet? And the Harrison Harbor Master says, I won't issue a permit or a mooring placement in the 100 to 200 foot designated mooring zone without access to that mooring on a right of way or a deeded permit or anything like that from abutting property owners. If there's a 20-foot wide right of way down between two pieces of property and there's a mooring, I will place that mooring in that 20-foot wide area out past 100 feet. It'll be permitted, it'll be registered, and they'll pay for that on an annual basis. If the two abutting properties abut close on the property line and there's no access to that area, I won't issue a mooring in the designated mooring zone. But I will then take that request for a mooring and place it in the designated, the mooring field that they have at the end of Long Lake. That's their process. If we say we wouldn't authorize the harbor master to put a mooring in the designated mooring zone between 100 and 200 feet without access written permission from the abutting property owners, where are we going to tell them they can put a mooring?
Well, I don't agree with it has to come through consent of the abutting property owners. I think for someone to get permitted in that designated mooring zone, they need to have a plan as to how they're going to access that mooring. And if that's through, for example, a boat ramp to Pitcher Pond, that can be acceptable. It doesn't have to be through a landowner, but they have to have some way to justify parking and access.
So what that opens up is what you're saying, Rich, that opens up a scenario of somebody wanting to put a mooring in the 100 to 200 foot designated mooring zone. And
That's not the designated mooring zone. That's the shorefront owner's zone.
No, the designated mooring zone, 100 feet to 200 feet.
Yeah,
If somebody comes to the town office and said, I want to put a mooring in a designated mooring zone, which is 100 feet to 200 feet.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right.
Then it comes up to the harbor master to pick a spot, place that mooring, take a fee for that, which is registered at the town office, and that person now has a mooring at that designated spot. What we're saying is how that person gets to that mooring is up to them.
That's,
The only way they can get to it is to have a boat or swim to it wherever is designated by the harbor master, parking in a public area.
or
And
getting consent from an abutting property owner. I mean, that's another option, but it doesn't have to be the only one.
correct. If they have permission from a property owner to put a mooring 100 to 200 feet, and the harbor master approves it, and that person has permission to get to that mooring across that property, that's not a problem.
Right, but the ordinance has to say that.
Yep.
If they do not get written permission from a property owner, Jay, what you're saying is Inland Harbor Master is going to place that mooring someplace and they have to figure out how to get to it
Correct.
through
A
public.
legal way of getting there.
Correct.
Exactly.
Right. We can authorize the mooring. They will pay a fee for that and register it at the town office. The harbor master will designate the spot where that mooring is going to go. And that's our responsibility. It's their responsibility to get to it.
Yeah.
They can't park their car on a property owner's property that's in front of that mooring. They have to, park at a public, like Breezemere, for instance, and then have some means of getting to their mooring.
Yeah.
Running that scenario, I don't see a lot of people wanting to apply for that kind of a mooring, quite honestly.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think the numbers are gonna be too high. Justin,
Oh.
what does this sound like? What does this sound like to you, Justin, so far?
A hot mess. That's what it sounds like.
Why? Explain that, please.
I just think that it's gonna open up a can of worms. It's gonna be a lot of headaches. We're talking about trying to figure this out, but we don't even know who's gonna be orchestrating it. I like Harrison's model because it gives the Inland Harbor Master in Harrison basically the reins to the whole thing. The less hands in the pot, the less messier it is. He starts it from start to finish basically and doesn't include the town in there other than a short financial process.
Mhm.
We don't know yet how we're even going to handle this process once we try to figure the process out, or how the town wants to handle it. I mean, there's just a lot going on with no answers.
When I talked to David about this, and I asked him, I said, how much of a burden would this administrative process that is put forth in Sally's draft? He said it would be not a burden, but it would be quite a lot of work, I guess is the way he puts it.
Mhm.
He said they would do it. They would examine it. They'd put together, the application papers, the renewal papers, the storage of the information, the data that they have to collect every day. They would handle the fees involved, which would be 2 different fees for, the shoreline zone and the designated zone. They would do all that, but they wouldn't really be happy about it, I guess is a way of doing it.
Yeah.
My question to you, Justin, is how much of that burden are you willing to accept as the Inland Harbor Master in controlling the whole process, except for the handling of the fees?
Well, I think for the matter of trying to come to a solution and an agreement that works for everybody, I would be in full support of whatever aspect I had to cover with that. The problem is going to be whether or not I have the time to be able to do it. That's going to be the issue. So what I'm trying to say is I would support any decision that would come to an agreement that worked for everybody. Whether that put the Harrison model type of burden, so to speak, on me or not, if that was what it took to come to a solution that worked for everybody, I would be in agreement to that. But then therein falls the issue of whether or not I'm going to have the time. So I can't say right now whether I'm going to be able to have the time with everything else that I got going on.
You could have an
because I don't-
assistant.
Like I said, the more hands in the pot, the messier it's going to get,
True.
I think, personally.
If I talked to David and we came up with the creation of a software program that you could put into your computer that would create the application form, have them fill it out online, send it back to you, you approve it. And if there's a fee involved, mail that to the town, the Harrison thing, mail that to the town office. and you get a copy back that said it's been paid, and you file it. You keep the files, you keep the data. I asked the Harrison harbor master, I said, do you alert everybody each year that it's time for renewal of their mooring, which is on an annual basis? He said, no. He said, it's on an annual basis, it's due whenever, and if it's not, then I do something about the fact that they didn't renew it.
Jay, let me clarify something.
Yeah.
When you said you had a talk with David and he was talking about the work, the extra work and close to a burden, you were talking about the issue of registration even for moorings of property owners as well, weren't you?
Correct.
So we're talking about a very small number compared to that of new applications from non-shorefront owners, particularly if they have to meet those requirements of access and parking.
Correct.
I don't think we're talking about many people at all, Justin.
And I believe that we should make that clear with any presentation to the town, that based on what we're presenting, that it's only going to be some very determined people that want those moorings in the designated mooring zone. First of all, the reason someone has a mooring, puts their boat on a mooring, is so they have easy access to it and they don't have to trailer it. If the thing's out 200 feet offshore and down the shore, so to speak, from where they're parking, it's no longer convenient. So it's, as Jay, as you said, if you've got to take a boat to your boat on a lake, it starts not making a lot of sense.
The example, Paul, would be that sailboat that was about 200 feet down from the Route 52 boat launching ramp a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
It was out there for the whole summer, and it was about, I would say, 75 to 100 feet offshore, and maybe 100 yards down from the boat launching ramp, and it was there all summer. I don't know who's put it out there. I don't know how they got to it, whether they swam or whether but that's what would happen. But it would be from 100 to 200 feet out.
Yeah.
And the mooring would be in place in such a way that the swing arc of that boat on that mooring wouldn't exceed the 200-foot limit that the Title 38 outlines. But that would be up to the harbor.
And I would suggest that swing arc also not come within 100 feet of the shore.
Correct.
And so that means you're basically dropping the rock at about 150 feet out.
Right.
When you're doing all this. So.
And it would also be up to the harbor master not to place a mooring within a designated swim zone, so that in Camden, that's going to bring, Route 52 mooring field into play with the swim area at the beach there. So that kind of, we don't think we have that problem in Lincolnville. But I will ask the question again, if we do go in this direction and say that we're going to designate the designated mooring zone under the jurisdiction of the Inland Harbor Master and allow moorings there under a fee and registered, if they don't have if we put in the clause that if they don't have access, the harbor master won't put them there, where do we put them?
That's the rub right there, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. We can't say Breezemere, I don't think. We'll have to plot Breezemere out, but there certainly wouldn't be more than one or two moorings available at Breezemere because of the boat club ramp, plus the access to the boat launching ramp, which you need a fairway for. So,
right.
Well, we know at Coleman and Pitcher, it's been very difficult to try to figure that out. I worked on that for 2 months trying to see if, talking to residents on the lake and our board. I'm a board member there at Pitcher. Trying to come up with a place on these small lakes to put a common mooring area it's going to be, I don't know, next to impossible, it seems like.
Yeah.
And didn't Sally bring up all sorts of reasons why not? Because you'd have to measure every inch of the shoreline before deciding which.
True. That's true too.
If you read Sally's draft for the ordinance, she does not mention mooring fields at all.
Right.
She
But what
allows,
about-
she
what
allows
about-
moorings in the shoreland zone, registered and fee. And she allows
Mhm.
moorings in the designated mooring zone, registered and feed.
Right.
And the harbor master has the authority under
Right,
title.
and no
38.
designated ones.
There's no designated mooring fields, doesn't even mention in the definitions. And we do. So,
But
but her
this-
question, remember when we had a meeting with her, her question was, well, you can't restrict and say to the people of Maine, you can't have a mooring on the water anywhere. You can't do that. So,
But you can't have regulation, and
yes,
and Paul, the attorney you're working with did say the towns do have a lot of power in terms of how they word an ordinance like that, right?
Correct. And I guess I would just go back to how all the coastal towns deal with their harbors and moorings out there. And they have designated mooring fields and they have waiting lists if they're full. And so it's basically the same kind of thing. It's if you could have a mooring field. The rub I see it for Lincolnville is there's no obvious place to put a designated mooring field.
Yeah.
If you could probably put one, you could probably put one at Breezemere, but all you're doing is bringing trouble because you've got a boat ramp, a swim beach, the boat club's already there.
Yeah.
And basically you're driving everybody into that one little corner of Norton Pond and you're just asking for user conflicts.
well, the other issue with that, Paul, is the fact that if you're standing at Breezemere looking out at Norton's Pond, the area to the left is too shallow for moorings. It's kind of like Bog Bridge.
Correct.
The area to the right is a 90-degree angle in the shoreline from Breezemere, makes a 90-degree angle and goes down the Norton's Pond shoreline. That abutting property liner's frontage out 100 feet, 90-degree intersects the property of the town of Lincolnville.
Right.
In other words, they cross each other. So would that person object to creating a mooring field in the area where the town of Lincolnville has a right to do that?
Right.
That question could come up.
The only comment I would make about Bog Bridge, it is shallow. Some people have said they don't want to put their moorings in there, but people, and every year we have more and more moorings over there. And so far that, you just have a short swing on in a shallow area. Most of the people, frankly, who told me they didn't want the moorings over there is because they didn't want to swim through the weeds to get to their boat.
You can practically walk to your boat from there.
Well, yeah, but as I said to him, well, the signs of both of those boat ramps say no swimming. So, I'm not concerned about your problem swimming through the weeds when you're not supposed to be swimming.
Anyway. Well, look, Justin, I would like to ask you this, Justin. If there were, say, 5 to 10 requests for moorings in a designated mooring area, that 100 to 200 feet in a season, 5 to 10, would that be manageable for you?
Yes,
Okay. I guess I don't foresee more than that, but I can't predict.
And where would you think that, what lakes would you think those would be on? Rich? Those
Well,
10,
for sure Norton, because that's happened there before.
well, Norton's pretty crowded.
Yeah, but there'd still be areas 1 to 200 feet that people could be thinking about dropping in a mooring. And
Because it's almost not, it's not that far across, so you'd
Nor-
have to have a place for navigation.
Norton's far enough across, I think.
Yeah.
It is?
Oh, yeah.
Norton is far enough across to allow that. One thing that boaters don't like about Norton Pond is, especially if you're going to have a larger boat, an 18-foot boat or something like that, or one of those pontoon boats, you can't get once August hits, it's very difficult to get into to McGonagall. And a lot of people like that. And even the shorefront owners on Norton Pond are always saying, well, that's it. We can't get to McGonagall now. So all we can do is go round and round and round at Norton Pond here. So I think that's also something that knocks down the demand at Norton. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if people would look at the Lincolnville side of McGonagall and think about putting moorings in there. So,
Lisa, can you see this?
Yeah.
That's Norton Pond and that's Breesmere Park. And the red line that's there is the 200-foot line from the shore, which is the yellow line.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, then a lot of space. Yeah. Fine.
And I think
Thank
Pitcher Pond would have a few requests for sure. I mean, it's already happened once this summer. But I just don't think there'd be a lot of requests, at least for a few years. I might be wrong.
I would agree with you. So let's make a proposal. Our draft should be clearly stated that we are not in favor of having registered or fees charged for moorings that are in the shoreline to the 100-foot zone in front of a shoreland owner's property.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
We are in favor of the designated mooring zone between 100 and 200 feet on all the lakes and ponds that we have in Lincolnville, permitted for moorings with a fee and an annual registration enforced by the harbor master.
Yes. Correct.
So that's a minor modification to our draft. Town office, I don't believe would have a problem administering that. And it sounds like Justin wouldn't have a problem administering that. And we can also promise to take a look at Breesmere Park and see what actually working within the 200-foot distance could actually be accommodated as far as a mooring field. And I say that with like 1 or 2 moorings in mind. Well, that's because that would probably be about it. But at least that would be a place for the harbor master to say, well, I can't put you in front of wherever, but I can put you in one of the 2 moorings at Breesmere or on the waiting list at Breesmere of one of those 2.
Yeah, that would be a nice option if we had a couple. Yeah.
All right. Any objections to any of that
No, but was there not going to be a stipulation that you needed the landowner's permission to access a mooring that's in front of their property? I mean, people just can't need the landowner's permission to go across their property.
Any landowner can say a landowner has 100-foot, 0 to 100-foot area in front of their place, but they can't put a mooring there because it's too shallow.
Yeah.
Then the harbor master can allow them to go out to the 100 to 200-foot area and put a mooring there if they
No,
want.
but I was actually thinking of somebody wanting to put a mooring out 100 in the DMZ zone.
Right. Yeah.
They have to have the landowner's permission to walk across their property to access that.
Yes.
They have, right, that would be a requirement.
Yes. And we can put that in the order.
Similar to Harrison.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't say they can't have the mooring there.
No, but they have to have the permission of the landowner.
Right. But if they do have the mooring there, access to that mooring is their responsibility.
Is their responsibility to figure it out. But there has to be something in the ordinance that stipulates that the landowner's permission is required to access it, similar to the way that Harrison has it.
You're saying 2 different things here.
Yeah.
Am I?
No, I mean, you're saying something different than Jay's saying here, I think.
Yeah.
What we talked about earlier, which is that I guess it's a question of whether we have that requirement or whether we go back to the idea that they can either do that or have some other means of getting to their mooring, and that they make that clear.
But you have to
To the
stipulate
inlet
that.
harbor master.
Yeah, a resident's, even a non-resident's right on the water is regulated by the state. They can take a boat, swim, do whatever they want, wherever they want on the water. The water belongs to the state. We're saying access to a mooring in the 100 to 200-foot designated mooring zone cannot be across a private property owner's property without permission from that property owner.
Right. So we'd have to
If
have
they
an
want to
ordinance.
park their car at Bridgemere Park and take a little dinghy and go a half mile down Norton's because
That's
where the
fine.
harbor master is.
Yes,
That's
that's
fine.
how I think it should be understood, yeah. Sounds good. Do we
But are
want to
we
have,
proposing an ordinance for, yeah,
no,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, do we want to have also anything about parking? Where they're gonna park? Is that something that matters?
It wouldn't be within the purview of the harbor master to enforce that, but there are ordinances and rules in the town, I think, that are enforceable, having to do with parking, safe parking on public thoroughfares and things like that. I think they're already in place.
Okay, good.
because the Harrison one says, under mooring registration, proof of shorefront ownership or access by deed or written permission of the owner of the lot adjacent to the mooring location, as well as the address for vehicular access and parking availability and size.
Yeah, Harrison, I think, did mention the parking, as Lee says, but I agree with you, Jay. There's other laws about that
Sorry.
that can take care of it. So we don't need to add that.
Harrison has two boat launching ramps. Actually, they're across the street from each other because Crystal Lake is on the other side of the main street of Harrison from the Long Lake boat launching area. The Crystal Lake boat launching area is owned and run by the town, but they don't allow moorings there because it's too shallow, similar to Bog Bridge. They do have a public parking lot across the street that's at the head of Long Lake, and that Long Lake area has the public parking area, the boat launching ramp, and a designated, not a designated mooring zone, a mooring field
Mhm.
designated by the town, which is administered by the inland harbor master. That's a situation that they have that I don't think we do have. I think our only means, other than designated a shoreline zone and designated mooring zone, is to designate a mooring field of whatever we can at Breesmere. I don't see it anywhere else in
Right.
town.
So you don't think it would be a good idea
So
to
what they-
propose the new Harrison ordinance? Because it goes into things like houseboats and things like that. It is quite comprehensive.
Jay, I
Yeah.
would suggest that either in this ordinance or in something else, that the town not allow overnight stays on boats.
Yeah.
That gets you out of the trying to define what a houseboat is and protects you from houseboats and the VRBO or whatever rentals, which are starting to crop up around Maine. And
Yeah.
we don't have
It
pump
kind of
out,
comes into the,
so it seems to me that's a reasonable thing to do.
that kind of comes under the heading of anchoring as opposed to mooring.
Yep.
So when you say they can't anchor overnight, that's fine. We can probably throw it in there somewhere. It doesn't really relate to the mooring ordinance, but it comes under Justin's request for enforcement authority and clarity on enforcement authority. So if we were to say that overnight anchorages were not allowed under the mooring ordinance, then Justin has something to enforce if somebody does do that with a
Right.
houseboat or whatever.
Good.
So
I
we
think
could do
that's
that
good.
also.
Should
But
be-
something to consider is, do we want to rewrite the draft, or do we want to, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know why I keep getting phone calls. Sorry. Clearly I'm in control of my system. Do we want to propose using that new Harrison order, or do we want to go and rewrite what we wrote before? I mean, I'm thinking of the logistics of it, because I think rewriting the lawyer's draft would be a difficult one. That's why I
What I
just
would
think it's so
propose-
simple to have Harrison.
What I would propose, and I spoke about this with David, is that if we're in agreement on where we are specifically and where we'd like to go with this thing, it's not
Mhm.
done yet. We haven't reprinted it or redone it, but we know where we want to go with it, how far we want to take it. Justin seems to be okay with the enforcement part of it and taking over whatever administrative duties would be involved in the designated mooring zone, is taking that to the selectmen. In other words, he would set up something with the selectmen, and the mooring committee would go, probably by Zoom, but the mooring committee would go to the selectmen and propose what we have just talked about, and then get their reaction to it and get their feelings on how we should proceed. They will have
And then
Sally's.
at that point, decide whether or not we could take the Harrison ordinance, create a new one or whatever.
Well, they would have Sally's draft beforehand. They
Yeah.
would have our draft where we have already sent it to them. They already have that draft. And I could look that over again. And then we could brief them on what we've talked about and where we'd like to see this thing end up. The timeline for doing it is getting pretty close because
Sure is.
the referendum's got to be written, by April or something like that, so it can get on the town meeting schedule. So we're getting close to it. But if they gave us the go ahead to proceed in that direction and take it to that point, I don't see a big deal in adding some drafting words to get that ordinance up to where we think it ought to be, and then present it to them. And of course, it has to be run by Sally, who won't be happy, but.
Well, she dismissed ours, our earlier one, because she felt it was, that Harrison wasn't using it anymore. And that was her reason, as I understood it, to dismiss it and rewrite and do her draft.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it wouldn't be something to consider to say to her, we can use the new Harrison draft.
Well, whatever we do will be at the direction of the selectmen.
Right.
And when we do that, then it'll be presented to Sally.
Right.
And the selectmen will receive Sally's comments on it, and that's up to them what they want to do.
Yeah.
I like that idea, Jay, rather than go to Sally again, and maybe having her just shoot it down again.
Right.
Like when hear the logic of it and, the work we put in. And as far as Sally's concerned, Lise, I think her biggest objection was the fact that we were trying to, create these common mooring fields. And she was saying, basically, you can't do that. You can't shut off the 100 to 200 feet to the public. And she didn't even want to hear much else from us. So, we're giving that back. And, we understand that we have to do that.
Well, basically, what we've just talked about is using Sally's draft.
Yeah.
Except she requires registration, fees, enforcement of both the shoreland and the designated mooring zones, and never mentions mooring fields. So we're following that model, except that we're saying, or we're suggesting to the town, we don't have fees or registration for shoreland zone moorings. We let those happen as they are right now, or as they may in the future. If it presents a hazard to navigation, then we give authority to the inland harbor master to enforce that. And then we designate a designated mooring zone, 100 to 200 feet anywhere. And the spot is chosen by the inland harbor master, and the administration of that is with the inland harbor master. If we charge a fee, that fee runs through the town office. That's the only town office involvement in the whole thing. And then that's the way we go.
And then a couple of stipulations that landowners' permission is required to, if you want to traverse a private property, and something about overnight stays and a couple of other additions.
Yes. Yeah, we can put that in there.
Because it was a free-for-all, her Sally's draft. I mean, anybody could put a mooring anywhere and traverse anybody's property to get to their mooring, and you could just do anything you wanted.
Right.
Sounds good, Jay. It simplifies it, I think.
So I'll propose that to David.
Really good.
Okay.
Yes,
Good with that, Paul?
I am.
Good with that, Justin?
Justin,
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's where we go.
Yeah.
After setting that up with David and I'll put some things together for the meeting that we'll have with the selectmen on specific points that we've just talked about and present that to them. But then we'll be available to answer questions they have on where we are or where we're going. And hopefully they'll give us some direction on where to take it.
If you write those points up, Jay, could you just shoot those out to us quick
Sure.
before the meeting?
thank you.
Yeah, Justin, have you looked at, do you have copies of our proposed draft and Sally's proposed draft?
I have our proposed, I can't be on, I don't know if I have Sally's or not.
Okay. And if you are to review that and you have the information from the Harrison Harbor Master on what he does and what his responsibilities are and how he handles and stuff like that, then I think that we've all looked at all the information we have. All the data that we have compiled is what we just talked about, and we've come out of this with a direction we want to take it and a proposal to do a final draft and present it to the town.
Very good.
We're on board with that.
Yep.
Okay, then I will talk to David.
Well,
Yeah,
good luck.
Thanks to all of you for being part of
Yeah.
this.
Okay, if there's nothing else,
Okay, be in touch.
moving on. Thank you.
Very
all.
good.
All right, guys.
Bye.
Have a good
Have a good evening.
evening.
Take care.